The sharp, clinical scent of ozone hangs heavy in the air of a modest Cotswold cottage, clashing with the domestic aroma of baking scones. In the corner of the kitchen, partially shielded by a child's wooden blocks and a half-finished knitting project, a high-frequency radio transmitter hums with a cold, rhythmic pulse. The vacuum tubes glow a faint, predatory orange in the English twilight, casting long shadows against the floral wallpaper. This is the deceptive silence of 1941, a suburban sanctuary where a mother of three sits with her hand on a telegraph key, operating as the most lethal intelligence node in the Red Army's global network. This is the Bury St. Edmunds Protocol, a masterclass in domestic camouflage that allowed Ursula Kuczynski, codename Agent Sonia, to bypass the most sophisticated counterintelligence filters of the British Empire. Declassified MI5 surveillance logs reveal a staggering oversight. While investigators hunted for shadowy men in trench coats, they ignored the woman pushing a pram through the village square. Sonia didn't just hide her equipment, she integrated it into the mundane rhythm of a housewife's life, transforming a rural home into a black box of high-level espionage that the world's premier intelligence agencies were cognitively blinded to perceive. The data she transmitted was not mere gossip, but the decrypted secrets of empires. Within these four walls, Sonia managed a flow of information that would determine the survival of the Soviet Union, while simultaneously evading the reach of Hitler's Gestapo. The modern link is chilling. Her success established the template for the deep cover operatives who still move among us today, exploiting the same systemic blind spots. As the signal cuts through the static of the British countryside, it carries with it a zero-day vulnerability in the history of human trust, a realization that the person most likely to betray the state is the one you would never suspect of holding the knife. Ursula Kuczynski mastered the social engineering vector with a precision that turned her very identity into a high-level encryption layer. During her years in Switzerland and later in London, she functioned as a ghost within the machinery of the Red Orchestra, the legendary anti-Nazi spy ring. Her logistical brilliance relied on the logic of the mundane, where she synchronized her illegal transmission windows with the peak hours of civilian radio traffic. By broadcasting her coded bursts during times of maximum atmospheric and signal noise, she ensured that her frequency would appear as nothing more than environmental static. Technical dossiers from the Rotkapelle investigations highlight her refusal to adopt the typical behaviors of a fugitive. Instead of hiding, she leaned into the visibility of her role as a mother and neighbor, utilizing her children as unintentional decoys for MI5 and the Abwehr. While German signal hunters swept neighborhoods with direction-finding vans, Sonia was often seen hanging laundry or walking to the local market, her physical presence acting as a firewall against suspicion. She understood that intelligence agencies are fundamentally bureaucratic organisms. They look for patterns of deviance, and by exhibiting a pattern of perfect normalcy, she rendered herself architecturally invisible to their gaze. This logistical invisibility was not a matter of luck, but of cold, calculated synchronization. Every movement was an entry point into a system that was biased toward ignoring women in domestic roles. Sonia exploited this cognitive oversight to maintain a steady stream of data between the GRU and her handlers without ever triggering a secondary audit of her activities. Her house was a node in a shadow network, operating under a protocol of assumed innocence. By the time counterintelligence officers realized a transmitter was operating in their backyard, Sonia had already moved the signal, proving that the most effective hiding place is not in the dark, but in the center of the light. Surviving as a double agent between the GRU and the Abwehr required a cognitive pattern capable of navigating the asymmetrical trust protocols of two diametrically opposed, yet equally paranoid, regimes. Sonia operated within a cognitive triangle, constantly balancing the blood-soaked internal logic of Stalin's purges against the expansionist arrogance of Hitler's high command. She didn't merely provide raw data, she curated a specific dossier of truth for each side, feeding them exactly enough verifiable information to ensure her own indispensability. Her psychological toolkit included what modern behavioral profiling would call asymmetrical trust. She understood that a lie becomes unassailable when it confirms what the listener already believes. When the Gestapo questioned her about her brother, a known communist, she admitted the relationship freely but described it as an estranged family embarrassment. The interrogators moved on. By understanding the specific fears of her handlers, the Soviet fear of internal betrayal, and the German obsession with racial superiority, she was able to manipulate their reporting structures. This manipulation was a clinical exercise in risk management. In an era where a single whispered accusation could lead to a summary execution, Sonia maintained a technical silence that was both defensive and aggressive. She exploited the information gap, inherent in totalitarian structures, where mid-level officers were often too terrified to report discrepancies to their superiors. This allowed her to bridge the two most brutal systems in human history, outsmarting them simultaneously by playing on their shared inability to trust anyone. Her survival was a testament to the fact that in a world governed by terror, the most dangerous weapon is a mind that remains perfectly calm. The most significant inside info regarding Kuczynski's career involves her role as the primary courier for the physicist Klaus Fuchs and the Tube Alloys project, the British precursor to the atomic bomb. Declassified Venona project intercepts reveal the technical logistics of their clandestine handoffs in the isolated wooded areas of Oxfordshire. Sonia bypassed level divorce security perimeters at the Harwell Atomic Research Station, not with a badge or a bribe, but by pushing a baby carriage. Inside the carriage, tucked beneath a child's blanket or hidden within a hollowed-out wooden toy, were the blueprints for the plutonium core. This logistical maneuver fundamentally altered the nuclear balance of the 20th century, accelerating the Soviet atomic program by years. Sonia acted as the human interface between the scientist and the state, managing the signal hygiene of the documents to ensure they were never intercepted during transit. The handoffs were timed to coincide with her routine family walks, making the transfer of world-altering secrets look like a chance encounter in a park. While MI5 focused on the high-security gates of Harwell, the real breach was happening on a dirt path a few miles away. The technical implications of the Tube Alloys breach were catastrophic for Western intelligence. Sonia transferred microfilm schematics of nuclear detonators and enrichment processes that were considered the most closely guarded secrets of the British Empire. This was the ultimate attack vector, the exploitation of a physical blind spot in a high-security environment. By the time the British government realized the extent of the leak, the data had already reached Moscow, carried across the border by a mother who had successfully weaponized her own domesticity. Investigation into the Russian Memorial Archives reveals the sheer coldness, the surgical coldness, required for Sonia to survive the Great Purge. During the late 1930s, Stalin systematically recalled and executed almost every high-ranking member of the Red Orchestra and the GRU's foreign networks. Sonia watched as her friends, mentors, and fellow agents disappeared into the Lubyanka basement, yet she remained in the field. She employed a self-preservation protocol, rooted in technical silence and the careful manipulation of her value to the state. Her survival was not a matter of luck, but of a calculated strategic latency, a deliberate delay in responding to suspicious recall orders. She understood the internal mechanics of the Soviet collapse and maintained a reporting structure that highlighted her ongoing access to critical German and British secrets. By keeping her handlers focused on the product she was providing, she made the cost of her execution higher than the political gain of her liquidation. She moved through the rainy streets of Shanghai and the quiet towns of Switzerland like a figure under a street lamp, always one step ahead of the purge. This segment of her life highlights the grim reality of espionage. The most dangerous enemy is often your own employer. Sonia navigated the internal purge with the same clinical precision she used to evade the Gestapo. She maintained a dossier of silence regarding her personal political leanings, presenting herself as a loyal mechanical instrument of the party's will. This psychological mask allowed her to endure a period of institutional madness that destroyed thousands of others. She proved that in a regime built on blood, the only way to stay alive is to be the only one who knows how to operate the machine. Sonya's tactical invisibility forced a global recalibration of electronic warfare through her innovative use of signal burst transmissions. To evade the radio direction finding RDF vans of MI5, she developed a method that served as a precursor to modern packet switching technology. Instead of long, vulnerable broadcasts that allowed for easy triangulation, she compressed high volumes of encrypted data into extremely short, intense durations. By the time the RDF vans could lock onto her signal, the burst had already ended, leaving the technicians chasing a digital ghost. This evolution of signal hygiene represented a shift from perimeter defense to tactical invisibility. Sonya understood that the goal was not to stop the enemy from listening, but to make the signal too fast for them to locate. Her methods didn't just protect her. They exposed a fundamental oversight in the way states monitored their own airwaves, demonstrating that a small, agile transmitter could outmaneuver a massive state-funded surveillance apparatus. The legacy of her signal hygiene persists in modern military doctrine and cyber espionage. The burst method she pioneered is now a standard feature in covert communications, used to hide high-value data within the chaotic spectrum of the digital age. Sonya's ability to maintain tactical invisibility in 1941 set the stage for the electronic warfare battles of the Cold War and beyond. She proved that in the war for information, the most valuable asset is not the strength of the signal, but the brevity of its appearance. The black box effect of Agent Sonya's career is the realization that a single individual, armed with superior logistical and psychological architecture, can outsmart the two most brutal regimes in human history. She survived Hitler, Stalin, and the combined might of British intelligence, leaving behind a legacy that defines the modern landscape of deep cover operations. Sonya was the mother of Cold War espionage, her techniques providing the blueprint for the illegals and cyber operatives who continue to exploit the cognitive blind spots of the digital age. Her career reflects a fundamental truth about systemic vulnerability. The most effective attack vector is always the one hidden in plain sight. We live in a world of total surveillance, yet Sonya's story reminds us that the human element is the ultimate firewall. She didn't use advanced computers or satellite links. She used a telegraph key, a child's toy, and a profound understanding of human nature to rewrite the history of the 20th century. As the camera zooms out from a vintage telegraph key to a modern satellite orbiting the Earth, we see the continuity of her signal. The satellite flickers once, sending a burst of data that mirrors the rhythm of Sonya's original 1941 transmission. The specific technology has changed, but the game remains the same. The systems we build to protect us are only as strong as our willingness to look at what is right in front of us. Agent Sonya proved that a housewife in a quiet cottage could hold the power to destroy an empire, and that we are still living in the shadow of the signal she sent.